Listen, we all understand that Itachi has his fanboys. I'm one of them. I have a tattoo of him on my thigh. And there's nothing wrong with liking Itachi as a character. In fact, if you don't like Itachi as a character, I have some questions about your morals. Sure, Itachi was the pinnacle of evil in the early days of Naruto, but as more of his story was revealed, we realized he was a truly tragic character. A brother who put his entire life on the line and destroyed everything that he knew and loved in order to save his brother. And with a tragic backstory like that, and looks like Itachi has, you're gonna get a character that a lot of people like. However, with a character that people like as much as Itachi, a lot of nonsense goes on. And I'm not talking nonsense, ridiculous ships, no, I'm talking nonsense, ridiculous power scaling. See, the problem with Itachi is that he falls under the categorization of Naruto characters of nerfed by the plot. Essentially, Kishimoto has an entire category of characters that he makes way too powerful for anybody else in the story to defeat them, so he needs to find a way to take them out that doesn't include the main character somehow getting some ridiculous power-up. Though the main character getting a ridiculous power-up is probably the right way to do it, but I'm not the one writing the manga. But since Itachi is probably the worst case outside of Madara of nerfed by the plot, a lot of people speculate about how strong Itachi truly was, or what Itachi's peak was, or how strong Itachi could have been without his chakra illness. Or to take it even one step further than that, how strong would Itachi be with an EMS? And while for the majority, if not the entirety of my career as a Naruto YouTuber, I've been pretty speculatory on Itachi's true strengths, I'm realizing I might have been wrong. While I've been sitting here trying to downplay the speculative overhyping of Itachi's powers, I might have actually been misleading you. Because Itachi actually might have been a lot more powerful than we give him credit for. Or at least I give him credit for. A little bit of rereading of Itachi's light novels for fun, because that's what I do, brought a piece of information to light that I misinterpreted in my first couple of read-throughs. Mind you, it's been years since I've reread this light novel. But because I misinterpreted this incredibly specific moment in Itachi's second light novel, I misinterpreted Itachi's strength. But not all of his strength, just a very specific part of his strength that, well, completely changes how strong he should be interpreted to be. But even just by adjusting my perception on this one individual part of his kit, it does give him a legitimate contender status as one of, if not the strongest Uchiha of all time. But before I get to picking apart my own arguments, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you guys like listening to me flip-flop on anime opinions, you're gonna love my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where I talk all other anime besides Naruto and Boruto. Or if you just like listening to me talk about anime, you can follow my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So we all know Itachi's kit. It's as well documented as anybody's moveset in the history of anime. Itachi is a dual MS wielder, has things like a Susanoo that has the sword of Totsuka and a Yata mirror, weapons capable of sealing people away in pocket dimensions or blocking any kind of attack, be they physical or spiritual. He also, as a dual Sharingan wielder, has access to things like Izanagi and Izanami. He was one of the youngest ever Anbu captains and has a plethora of different jutsu he can use at an incredibly high level. He has the MS ability of Amaterasu, which allows him to fire off a black flame that burns forever or until he extinguishes it. But I don't want to talk about any of those abilities today. No, today I want to talk about his other MS ability, Tsukuyomi. See, we've done a lot of videos about Tsukuyomi on this page, and that's because I believe that Tsukuyomi is the strongest Genjutsu in all of Naruto. Between its strength, versatility, and speed at which it can be reused, I've always considered Tsukuyomi to be the strongest out of all of the Genjutsu, outside of Genjutsus from places like the Kurama clan or Infinite Tsukuyomi. Which is to say that I believe that Tsukuyomi is a better, more practical Genjutsu than Kodowa Matsukame. But here's the thing. Even I, apparently, have been underrating the true power of Tsukuyomi, which means we, as a community, have been massively understating the strength of Tsukuyomi. And if you understate any of Itachi's abilities, you're gonna hear about it. Usually not from me, but from me today. See, like I already said, recently I was rereading Itachi's light novels. Dorothy's out of town for a couple of days. I'm bored. And as I was flipping through Itachi's second light novel, Book of Dark Night, I got to one of the most dramatic and heart-wrenching scenes maybe in Naruto history. See, in the second light novel in Itachi's two light novel run, we get truly the deepest and most detailed look into the Uchiha massacre we've ever got. We follow Itachi as he goes through and massacres the entire clan. We see every person he cuts down and how he does it. And what we learn from all of these gory details is that the first person that Itachi cut down was his own girlfriend, Izumi, as well as her mother. But instead of just cutting down his girlfriend in cold blood like he did his father and his mother, he decided to give Izumi somewhat of a courtesy. Actually, maybe even more than just a courtesy. See, for those of you who haven't read the light novels, you'll still probably know how this goes, as pretty much any fan of Itachi knows exactly how he killed Izumi. But for those of you who don't know, let me explain. So Itachi, nervous about the whole I have to kill everybody I know thing, decides to start with his girlfriend, because after killing his girlfriend and her mother, he figured there's no going back. And thus, in order to make Izumi's passing as easy on her as possible, Itachi decides to enact the strongest ever Tsukuyomi we've ever seen onto her. And it's in this moment, and I forgot about this, that we get some pretty deep dive into like the mechanics of how Tsukuyomi works. See, the light novel tells us that every single second that passes in the Tsukuyomi world is actually only 1 times 10 to the minus 11th seconds in the real world. But that's a lot of zeros, so let me quantify it in a way that makes sense. Basically, what the light novel is trying to say here, with incredibly small numbers, is that for every 100 years that pass in the Tsukuyomi world, only 0.03 seconds pass in the real world. Basically, all the light novel is trying to tell us is that Itachi can spend as much time in the Tsukuyomi world as he wants, as Itachi has never even come close to spending 100 years in the Tsukuyomi world. Well, he has come close, but only this one time. See, the reason that I say it's the most powerful ever Tsukuyomi used is because Itachi shows Izumi her entire life. And that entire life involves a life with Itachi. Itachi builds out an entire life for the two of them, living in Konoha, where Itachi lives as a jonin who takes on missions, and then Izumi has children and retires as a ninja and raises the kids with Itachi. And they live a docile and simple and domestic life, married with kids in a peaceful Konoha. And Itachi builds this life out for them until the two of them are in their 80s. And at the end of this peaceful dream, Izumi dies of old age in Tsukuyomi, meaning that Itachi truly got to give her her entire life. Izumi wakes up after the Tsukuyomi dream to tell Itachi that it's alright and that he can go on without her, and that even though she wouldn't be with him, she would always be watching over him. It's a gorgeous moment, one of my favorites in the entirety of the Naruto series. But the part that I misinterpreted about the story is that I thought that after she woke up from the Tsukuyomi dream, that Itachi stabbed her to kill her. But that's actually not how it happened. And the reason that I thought that, and the reason that a lot of people probably think that, is because there's a really well-drawn fanfic panel of her waking up from this dream and Itachi stabbing her. But here's the thing, that's actually not what happens. While the image of Itachi holding a katana through his love's heart while she says, "It's okay, go on without me," and he apologizes, is gorgeous, it actually is incredibly misleading for understanding how powerful Itachi is. Because here's the thing, Izumi does not die from a stab wound. She dies from Tsukuyomi. Upon waking up from her Tsukuyomi dream, the reality of dying in Tsukuyomi overwhelms her brain so much that she passes away in real life. So in essence, Itachi killed Izumi with Tsukuyomi. That is very important, like wildly, borderline, indescribably important. Why is that important? Because nobody else in the history of Naruto has ever killed somebody with Genjutsu. Sure, technically you could play with somebody's 5 senses and have them walk off a cliff, and then technically you would kill them with Genjutsu. But what actually killed them is the gravity of the fall. The same goes if you were to do something like paralyze them with Genjutsu and then stab them. The thing that killed them there is the kunai you stabbed them with. But in this circumstance, the only thing that killed Izumi, who was a chunin with a 3-tome Sharingan, mind you, was Tsukuyomi, which means that Itachi can kill people with Tsukuyomi, which makes him amongst some of the strongest Genjutsu users ever. See, the biggest line with Genjutsu is that no matter what you do to somebody in Genjutsu, it doesn't actually reflect a real-world effect. This is the entire point of the Kurama clan filler arc, which for those of you who don't know anything about that, I'll go over it very briefly. See, the Kurama clan is a clan within Konoha, and every member of the Kurama clan is very naturally talented in Genjutsu. However, every couple of generations, there is a prodigy born. But the person isn't necessarily a prodigy. They're more of a Problem. See, every couple of generations, a member of the Kurama clan is inhabited by the spirit of an entity known as Ito. It's a sentient and malicious personality that takes over a part of the Kurama clan member's brain. However, it's a lot more than just a personality, as those who are inhabited by Ito are able to use the clan's Kekigenkai, which makes them incredible at Genjutsu to the highest possible level. But Ito's not just like really good at Genjutsu, like Kurenai level. No, those who are inhabited by Ito have an incredibly specific set of skills. A set of skills that allows Ito to use Genjutsu so powerful that it makes the Genjutsu reality. Which means, let's say hypothetically, the person being controlled by Ito casts you into a Genjutsu where they cut off your hand. The Genjutsu is so powerful that your brain will convince your body to slop off your hand. Which means that if hypothetically Itachi was controlled by Ito when he used Tsukuyomi on Kakashi, Kakashi would have been filled with 72 hours of sword stab marks, which would have made Kakashi a very dead man. But Ito goes one step further than this. Ito was able to cast a Genjutsu so wide-reaching it was able to place the entirety of Konoha under Genjutsu. And since Yakumo likes to paint, Yakumo is the person from the Kurama clan who was taken over by Ito, a lot of the ways that Yakumo actually manifests these powerful reality Genjutsus is through her paintings. Like when she painted Konoha with a lightning bolt hitting the Kage office, which manifested a literal lightning bolt that hit the Kage office. And that's pretty much the most powerful we've ever seen Genjutsu, as only those who were inhabited by Ito were able to cross that line between Genjutsu and reality, becoming essentially the gods of the universe around them as they were able to impart their imagination onto the bodies of those they were projecting their imagination onto. It's, for all intents and purposes, Izanagi. Now, it is also stated that Kaguya has Genjutsu so powerful that she's able to make the Genjutsu a reality, which is mostly tied into her Rinne Sharingan. But for as long as I've been reading and watching and enjoying Naruto, those have been the only two people who could cross that line. Until now. As Izumi's brain being like, we just died in the Tsukuyomi world, now we're gonna die in the real world, is Itachi bringing Genjutsu back to another dimension entirely. And honestly, Itachi having the ability to make people believe that what happened to them in Genjutsu actually happened to them in the real world is corroborated by a couple of different events. Mostly the two other times we saw him use Tsukuyomi. See, obviously the most famous time that Itachi ever uses Tsukuyomi is in a battle against Kakashi. And when Kakashi accidentally makes eye contact with Itachi, he's cast into Tsukuyomi, where Itachi spends 72 hours stabbing Kakashi as he's nailed to a crucifix. Now, obviously Kakashi doesn't come out with 72 hours of stab wounds. However, after being released from Tsukuyomi, Kakashi collapses and goes into a coma that only Tsunade can get him out of. And this isn't the only time that Itachi does this. He also puts Sasuke into Tsukuyomi, which also puts Sasuke in a coma, which he also needs Tsunade to wake him up from. But I know what you're saying. You're saying,
Nick, Kakashi surely died in the Tsukuyomi dimension, and if we're saying that every single time somebody dies in the Tsukuyomi dimension they're supposed to die in reality, then Kakashi surviving kind of invalidates your point.
But here's the thing. Kakashi doesn't die in the Tsukuyomi dimension, because every single time that Itachi pulls the sword out of Kakashi, he heals Kakashi. Mind you, Itachi is the master of the Tsukuyomi universe. He is God. This is why he was able to clone multiple Kakashis, so he could stab multiple Kakashis through multiple Itachi conduits over 72 hours. Itachi can do anything he wants in the Tsukuyomi universe. And we never see Kakashi's head go down or him die or anything. He simply screams every time he's stabbed. And thus we know that Itachi was keeping Kakashi alive so he can inflict more and more torture upon him. And the reason that Sasuke doesn't die in the Tsukuyomi dimension is because Itachi wasn't actually inflicting any physical harm to him in the Tsukuyomi dimension. He was just making him relive the Uchiha massacre over and over and over again. And the fact that Itachi didn't kill either Sasuke or Kakashi in the Tsukuyomi realm actually corroborates my point. See, we know that Itachi is a double agent. He didn't want to hurt Sasuke or Kakashi. I mean, sure, was there probably better, less dangerous ways to incapacitate two of the greatest assets in Konoha's history? Yeah, but Itachi didn't have a lot of chakra and therefore wasn't in much of a situation to fight Kakashi in a long drawn-out battle, hoping to get away and not get caught so he could continue being a spy. And he was trying to drum up Sasuke's hate for him so Sasuke would gather enough power to eventually defeat him one day and live as a strong, independent little boy. So unfortunately, Itachi didn't have much option outside of using Tsukuyomi. And in fact, this is why Itachi is almost blind by the time of his death, because he has to use his incredibly broken MS abilities to end fights quickly. But if he was actually trying to take people like Kakashi and Sasuke out of the fight, why not just kill them in the Tsukuyomi universe? I can't imagine there's anything more traumatic than dying. And that's probably because Itachi figured out after his first ever time using Tsukuyomi that if a person dies in the Tsukuyomi universe, that will be reflected onto their brain in the real world. And thus he made sure to never kill the likes of Sasuke or Kakashi in the Tsukuyomi universe, instead just doing enough to hospitalize them for a couple of weeks. But even that is a lot, because if we remember correctly, the only people who could break them both out of these comas that Itachi put them in was Tsunade, the greatest medical ninjutsu user of all time. The woman who found a cure for taking the tricolored pills. The woman who fixed Rock Lee when everybody thought he could barely ever walk again. The woman who countered hundreds, if not thousands, of Granny Chiyo's poisons during the Second Great Shinobi World War. This is by far and away the greatest medical ninjutsu practitioner in existence. And she was the only person who could take Kakashi and Sasuke out of their respective comas, which should show you the sheer amount of damage even not being killed in the Tsukuyomi universe does to your brain. We've seen dozens of other genjutsus in Naruto, and while things like Kodo Matsukame are able to rewrite your entire personality, Tsukuyomi is consistently the only genjutsu that full-on takes you off the battlefield. But it can do more than that, at least we think. Because what if Itachi decided to go a little bit further with Kakashi? What if instead of stabbing him in the arms and the belly, he stabbed him directly in the brain? What if instead of tying him to a crucifix and stabbing him for 72 hours, he just squished his head with rocks for 3 days? Maybe the first time Kakashi died wouldn't kill him in the real world, but what if he did this for a day, or 2 days, or 3 days, or a year? Mind you, 100 years in the Tsukuyomi universe only takes 0.03 seconds in the real world, which, to extrapolate even further, means that 1 full second in the real world is 3,333 years in the Tsukuyomi realm. Maybe your brain needs a little convincing that you're gonna die. Maybe it does take a couple of decades for you to be convinced that the Tsukuyomi world is actually reality. Maybe Itachi does need to play out your entire life for you so you die of old age. Or maybe you just need to die. What's crazy is it genuinely does not matter, because whether or not Itachi needs to play out a pretty little fantasy for you or just crush your head with a rock, he can do either of those things. And while obviously Izumi is not equal to Kakashi, Izumi did not have to go through torture. Izumi awoke after her Tsukuyomi dream was over. I mean, like, not for long, but long enough to say thank you to Itachi. There was no trauma in Izumi's Tsukuyomi Genjutsu casting. Imagine 6 decades of being stabbed on a crucifix. If the mental strain of just enduring it for 3 days is enough to put you in a coma that only the greatest medical ninjutsu practitioner on Earth can take you out of, what would a week do? What would a month do? What would a year do? It would probably kill you. And what does Itachi need to do to create this universe where he's the god and you are directly in the middle of it, completely at his whim? All he needs is eye contact and at most 0.03 seconds. That's it. And here's the thing about Tsukuyomi. We don't know whether or not the more time that Itachi spends in the Tsukuyomi realm, the larger the chakra drain. Because obviously Itachi starts his night before he kills his entire clan with a 70-year Tsukuyomi dream. And obviously Itachi's chakra illness only got worse with age. It's not like he didn't have it when he was 13. He was always frail for the exact reason that he had a chakra illness. Now, overuse of his MS also massively accelerated the timeline to his death, and obviously he really didn't start using his MS until the Uchiha massacre. But if, hypothetically, the longer the dream that Itachi makes in the Tsukuyomi universe, the more chakra it costs him, I don't think he would have made it through killing his entire clan who were very much fighting back against him. As we learned in the light novel that Itachi was killing all of the combatants and Obito was killing the non-combatants. So it's not like Itachi had an easy night ahead of him. The reason that I'm saying this is because the Uchiha massacre and Itachi starting it with the 70-year Tsukuyomi kind of creates the point that there's just a certain amount of chakra required to activate Tsukuyomi, and however much time Itachi spends in Tsukuyomi is kind of up to him. It doesn't cost him anything extra or less to make the time short or longer, which means even as Itachi got older, so long as he could activate Tsukuyomi and he made eye contact with the right person, he should be able to kill them with it. Which brings us to the very logical question, why doesn't he do that? Well, there's a couple of reasons that Itachi isn't just killing people with Tsukuyomi willy-nilly. The first reason is Itachi was a spy in the Akatsuki, and therefore killing one of Konoha's greatest fighting assets like Kakashi would have been incredibly disadvantageous for his overall goal of helping Konoha. And I think we all understand why Itachi didn't want Sasuke dead. The second reason is that Itachi is a pacifist. It's a core tenet of who he is. It's actually why he probably manifested Tsukuyomi in the first place, because Itachi's soul was looking for a way to end fights without them coming to blows or him needing to kill other people. The third reason is he might have. We don't know everything about Itachi's life. There was a lot of years when he was in the Akatsuki that we know nothing about. He could have been placing people in Tsukuyomi and convincing them they died so their brain killed them in the real world. We just don't know. He's not the main character of the show. Okay, but then why didn't he use Tsukuyomi in any of the fights that we did see? Well, we've already covered the Kakashi and the Sasuke point, but let's talk about some of the other ones. See, the problem with Itachi is that a lot of his most important and most impressive fights come when he's brought back through Edo Tensei. But when he's brought back through Edo Tensei, he fights two people, one of them being Edo Nagato and the other being Kabuto. Let's talk about Nagato first. Using Tsukuyomi on Nagato is a bad idea for a couple of different reasons. One, Nagato is a wielder of dual Rinnegan, which confer him a massive Genjutsu resistance, which actually might be doubly so when you consider the fact that those Rinnegan were born from Madara's MS. Though there is no data to back that up, that's guesswork for me. So there's a possibility that if Itachi tried to use Tsukuyomi on Nagato, it just wouldn't work in the first place. But to take it even actually one step further than that, Tsukuyomi is borderline useless on an Edo Tensei body. See, let's say hypothetically that Itachi does place Edo Nagato under Tsukuyomi, and he spends anywhere between 3 days and 70 years stabbing Nagato with a bunch of holes. One, Itachi and Nagato were friends when they were brought back through Edo Tensei, so Itachi probably wouldn't want to do that. It's like a super unpleasant thing for everyone. And two, even if hypothetically Itachi was able to impart a massive amount of damage to Nagato's brain, since he is in Edo Tensei body, it'll just heal. Sure, for the 0.03 seconds that Itachi is placing Nagato under Tsukuyomi, he'll be standing still, and that's only if he placed Nagato under 100 years of Tsukuyomi. But the second that Tsukuyomi's over, Nagato will be like,
"Huh, that sucked."
and then just keep fighting. So using it against Edo Nagato didn't make any sense.
Okay then, Nick, why didn't he use it against Kabuto?
Well, Kabuto had a film over his eyes that made him immune to ocular-based Genjutsu, right? We remember that, we all remember that. But even if, hypothetically, let's say Kabuto forgot to flip down his lids, if Itachi were to cast Kabuto into Tsukuyomi, it would really fly in the face of everything that Itachi and Sasuke were trying to achieve. Because best case scenario, Kabuto was cast into a coma. Awesome. Now he can't make the sign to release Edo Tensei. Worst case scenario, the load on Kabuto's brain is so great that it kills him, and now he definitely can't release Edo Tensei. So using Tsukuyomi against Kabuto also makes no sense. So basically, in every single fight that Itachi had after he was brought back in the 4th Great Shinobi World's War, he wasn't in a position to use possibly his strongest move. But there could also be another reason that Itachi didn't use Tsukuyomi, and that could be that Tsukuyomi actually was the thing that was killing Itachi. See, I've done an entire video on this, and you can watch it right here if you're interested. But to give you a quick summation on this theory that I created, the real reason that the Tsukuyomi realm that Itachi creates is so powerful is because he makes it in exchange for his own life. See, we've seen Itachi use Tsukuyomi 3 times, but the duration that he used Tsukuyomi for those 3 times is massively different. For Sasuke, I believe it was 2 days. For Kakashi, it's 3 days. And then Izumi, it's almost 70 years. But Itachi exists within the Tsukuyomi dimensions that he creates. We've seen him there in every single one of the ones he created in Izumi's, Kakashi's, and Sasuke's, which leads me to believe that Itachi actually also has to go through whatever he imparts on a person he's casting into Tsukuyomi, which is incredibly corroborated by the fact that he lived side by side with Izumi for 70 years. It's also corroborated by the fact that Itachi's chakra illness doesn't really kick up until after the Uchiha massacre. And the reason that his chakra illness probably kicks up in the first place is because Itachi actually gave 70 years of his life to bring peace to Izumi. Now, whether or not it's a 1-to-1 ratio of 1 day in the Tsukuyomi realm equals 1 day in the real world for Itachi, we don't know. It's a theory. But this would explain why, after the Uchiha massacre, Itachi is incredibly frail and has very low chakra levels. As we know, the older you get, the lower your chakra levels become. Look at Hiruzen in his battle against Orochimaru. And this is why Itachi also has to keep himself alive by using medicine he gets from the Howling Wolf village to stay alive long enough so Sasuke can kill him, even though he dies at what, 22, 20 maybe? And thus this could be why we never see Itachi use Tsukuyomi for anything longer than 3 days after using it on Izumi. Because the more that Itachi uses Tsukuyomi, the more of his life he shaves off. And as we know, chakra and life force are pretty much equal in the Naruto universe. The more chakra he shaves off from his lifespan, the shorter his life force becomes. However, he was still inhabiting the body of a 20-year-old, which is why he had some physical strength feats and some speed. It's just his chakra expenditure was significantly expended by the fact that he spent 70 years of a chakra lifespan on giving Izumi the life she deserved. And thus maybe if you buy into my theory, and thus Itachi no longer has that second option of creating a world so realistic that you can give somebody their entire life and have them die of old age and then have that be reflected on their brain in the real world, which would really only give Itachi the option of stabbing somebody in the skull for 3 days and hoping that their brain convinces them that they're dead in the real world. But if you don't subscribe to my theory, which is just a theory so you really don't have to, you should take one thing and one thing alone from this video. Itachi can and has killed people with Genjutsu. And whether or not that Genjutsu would work on people like Obito and Madara and Nagato doesn't really matter all that much, as being able to kill somebody with Genjutsu is something that he and only one other canon character, Kaguya, are able to do. And considering the fact that being able to cast a Genjutsu is a battle of who has greater chakra control, and Itachi's chakra control was absolutely legendary, he placed Naruto under Genjutsu. And don't be like, oh, Naruto doesn't have good chakra control. He has some of the best in the universe, if not the best, next to Sakura. Itachi stands a pretty fair chance at placing some of the strongest people in the universe under a Genjutsu that might actually be able to kill them. So does this new revelation make Itachi the strongest ever Uchiha? Probably not. I'm sorry, I'm just being realistic. Does this make him stronger than 3 Rinnegan Madara? No. Does this make him stronger than adult peak form Sasuke? No. Does this make him stronger than Jubito? Probably not. Actually, almost definitely not. But is it an absolutely incredible wrinkle in the story that is Itachi? Yes. And it also cements the fact that Tsukuyomi is most definitely the most powerful Genjutsu on Earth. But what do I know? I just read Naruto light novels for fun. But if this video was fun for you guys, tell me in the comments below and tell me whether or not you believe Itachi might actually be the strongest Uchiha ever. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Time to heat up leftovers and boot up Baldur's Gate 3. Ooh, I should have made them pay for that ad.